Alrighty. The numbers have really climbed. Great. Welcome to this, our usual biweekly interim, everyone. This session is being recorded. I thought I pressed the button, but I don't, oh no, it's there. Great, lovely. We are recording. As always, it's the IETF Notewell. It covers the code of conduct and the intellectual property implications of you attending here. If you're not familiar with it, please read it. As always, audio video slides will be in Google Meet. If you want to enter the queue to make a comment, use the show of hands system here at Google Meet. And also, if I ask for a show of hands, use the same raise hand function. Click on the link in the Google Meet chat to go to the blue sheets and add your name and affiliation. Please do it now. And then mean logistics stuff can be also handled in Google Meet chat, like the, we can't hear you or what have you. But any sort of technical chat should be in the Zulip. There is a link to that. You're muted, Colin, if you're trying to talk. The Zulip, there's a link to the Zulip. It's a pinned item in the Google Meet chat. We need a scribe for today.
I can do it.
Thank you, Mathis. Alrighty, this is the agenda for today. We're in the Administrivia. The editors really wanted Victor to get a chance to explore this very old issue and get somewhere on it. That's that, and then we'll do it the rest of the time. The editor's time, I'll identify 2 issues. We might do another one if we have time, but it didn't seem like he wanted to label a particular one. Yes, Colin.
The share again does not work for me. So if you can just sort of, I mean, I'll follow along some other way, but highlight that for me as we go along, because.
Okay.
Thanks.
Weird. Okay. We're actually considering. Well, I'll send an email. Send an email about maybe potential other technologies, but I'll do that later. The one other administrative item I did want to talk about was a potential virtual interop, since draft 11 interop was very sparse in Stockholm. So thinking maybe end of this month sometime, or early June. Alan, is that what you had in mind?
I mean, we weren't ready until like the end of Stockholm, and so we would like another swing at it to, go through things with folks if other folks are ready. I think we're ready now, so sort of any time is fine. If other people are still catching up and need more time, that can be more the gating factor then.
So I'm just going to propose the first week of June. Is there anyone who will not be ready in the first week of June that would be likely to be ready later in June? Please speak up. All right. Let me go to the calendar.
Do we need to maybe ask the other question, which is like, does anybody want to do this besides me?
Yeah, show of hands. Raise your hand if you would like to participate in this event and are capable of doing so. Going once, going twice. All right, Suhas,
second week of June would work best for me. But I was thinking like if it helps, have the publish API if it lands before that, try it out as well. But that's not a requirement. But on the date, second week of June would be much better for me to join it.
Okay, it seems like Suhas and Alan and people were actually interested. So why don't you two just arrange a mutually agreeable date offline? Nobody, and you can announce this to the list if you want to invite others, but this does not sound super promising.
I mean, I do see two other people in this call who have implementations, you being one of them, Martin, and
We will not be ready.
okay. So you're not going to be able to do
Yeah,
it.
and I mean, we will probably not catch up until after Madrid.
So for me, it depends on which version we're going to interop on which date we're going to do it. Second week of June, I think there's a public holiday in Germany, so it might depend on that. And if we do version 11, that would be fine. I think I like the idea that Colin, I think, surfaced in the Slack that we do 11 for a bit longer now and try to do actual media interop. That would be cool, even though we fall behind the draft with the implementations.
Okay. So
Martin,
that's
a question for you. If we did 10, would you be able to do interop in that sort of time frame?
no, because I don't preserve backward compatibility, and I'm currently halfway between 10 and 11. I've had to freeze work.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense to me. Thanks.
Yep.
I did hear sort of conflicting things, which is like Suhas wants to do publish and Mathis is like, no, we have to stick on 11. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sort of tempted to give people, I recognize 11 was a lift and it was also very close in time to the previous draft. So it didn't give people a lot of time. So I'm okay kind of freezing things for a while. I do want to also get experience with publish, but whatever people want to do.
Are there any other breaking changes?
Sorry, so the only reason why I thought publish might be good to get some early testing is because by the time we freeze 12, we'll have some implementation experience to try it out and come back with some feedback if it helps on the new API. That was the only thinking I had on that.
Yeah, I mean, I separately proposed to the chairs and wanted to run to this group also, which is that historically we would just like cut a draft on the draft deadline, the last possible second, which is 2 weeks before interop. But I was suggesting that for draft 12, we cut it something more like 4 weeks before Madrid to give people more time to get to 12. But if we want to keep the mock transport draft at 11, I mean, the problem is publish won't be there. Like we could keep it at 11 for Madrid also, but I just don't know what people want to do.
Well, I think if you're concerned about just too much churn, then you could just do publish, then cut a new draft and just let that sit through Madrid. That would be an option.
There've been a few, yeah. I don't think any.
All right. Well, let's
Before we move on this one, like I feel pretty strongly like whatever we have done, we should put into a draft and publish the draft. I just don't think that we should try and interop necessarily to the latest version of the draft. I mean, I think we're always going to have a draft dropped. It'd be great to have a draft 4 weeks before Madrid, but I think we'll also have a draft 2 weeks before Madrid. I think there's always going to be one on the draft deadline, basically. But I don't think that should be our interop target. Those are two different things.
Excellent point. Editors, why don't you drop a draft 12, whatever you think there's a nice lump of stuff, like probably including publish. Ideally do it very early in July or in late June. That will be an interop target. And then draft 13 will not be an interop target, but that can be at the draft deadline. Okay. All right. Circling back to our virtual interop date, it doesn't sound like there's necessarily much agreement on this. Alan, you seem to be the lingua franca for this, so why don't you just like announce a date, and if people want to show up, they can show up.
If Mathis and Suhas are the people who are interested, we can coordinate offline. And
Okay, excellent.
anybody who happens to be available at that time can join us.
Okay, Victor, you're up. Did you propose slides?
If you mean to data tracker, not yet, but I can present them.
Please do, because we have people that are having trouble viewing the shared slides.
Okay, let me 1 second.
Why don't you do that, and I can take care of it immediately.
Hey, update on that. I'm sitting with Mo and I can watch his slides. So the problem's been solved.
Okay, never mind. Victor, just go.
Okay.
I gotta unshare, don't I? If you are late arriving, please sign the blue sheets. There's a link in the Google Meet chat. There's also a Zoom link. Many of you are late arriving. Go ahead, Victor.
This is a proposal to a relatively old issue, and I tweaked it out a bit when I was thinking about what was originally proposed and how it can solve the issues we have. So let's start with description of the problem. So in MOQ caching model fundamentally relies on this idea that you have a unique track name, and on a track, an object with group and object ID for a given object ID can be has always to be unique, which means if you, for a given track, publish the object with those IDs, it has to be identical if you ever republish that. So why is this presents a challenge? And the challenge here is that in some cases, so if you imagine a very simple video streaming application, you would publish, let's say, video groups, and you would publish them with ID 0, 1, 2, 3, because this is gives you a compact sequential range, and that approximates what existing live video systems do very closely. But the problem here is that if you ever, let's say you're running a mobile app and you're streaming from a mobile app, and your mobile app crashes, or the operating system decides that it's using too much memory, it's going to kick it. It crashes, it restarts, it does not necessarily know what its latest group ID is because, well, it crashed and has no reliable record of its state. And there are currently 2 ways to address this problem. The problem is that if it starts, it has no way to know what group it can start publishing from. And there is a secondary problem that if it's published to catalog, it needs to guarantee that whatever it published is compatible with declarations it made in catalog about what codec settings it uses, etc. Alan?
You have a clarifying question. How does it know if it loses all state? How does it know the track name that it's publishing on?
Well, if it knows the conference name, it can reconnect to a server. Like say it has some metadata servers that will tell it that you're in this conference.
Okay, so if the use case you're saying is this thing comes up with 0 state and it contacts some other system to learn something.
Yes.
Okay.
Now there are 2 things that we currently can do on application level. One is that if you do something like set your group IDs to timestamps, you will not have this problem because since you're using timestamps, your group IDs, as long as your clock is relatively correct for some loose definition of relative, the groups will not collide. And the other one is you can put some kind of distinguishing random token at the end of your track name, and both of those solutions kind of have issues. The problem with group IDs is now you're wasting a lot of ID space, and the problem with track name is now it makes your track names more complicated. And now you have to deal with wildcard subscriptions if you want to handle this transparently. But those are my key observation here is that, well, fundamentally, relays already know when you crash and when you reconnect, and relays are in a much better position to deal with the observation with this problems that an application is. And fundamentally, knowing which publisher you're talking to sounds like a Bhakti problem, not a problem that we should be punting toward. So I have a very simple proposal. Well, the concept is very simple. There are some implementation details which will not be simple, which I'll discuss later. But basically, in addition to track name, you have some integer, which I'll refer to as trackable. And in simple scheme, you can just set it to Unix time in milliseconds. And that's Unix time of milliseconds when you started generating objects. So you send it in your publish or in your subscribe, okay, depending on which direction it's going. And by the value of the epoch, you can decide what exactly is happening. So if the epoch matches, it means you're publishing the same track, and there are no issues with having two publishers at the same time. If the epoch is too old, that means you're probably a client that got lost. And the epoch is too new, is newer than the older epochs. It means the old client crashed and the new client has joined, and which is the same client, it's just restarted. And this means we can now replace the old publisher. And there is the way it looks on the subscriber side is by default, you don't receive anything except for the epoch and number in subscribe, okay. And then if the track epoch ever changes, i.e. if it ever becomes higher, what basically happens is the relay adds an extension to objects telling you that, by the way, this is at a higher epoch than the one you originally subscribed to, which means, by the way, the client subscribed, you might want to, the client probably crashed and restarted, and you might want to reset your decoder. That is effectively the implication here. And there is, I have a specific proposed encoding on the slide with subscribe ID, with a parameter that solves this. From my perspective, this is really easy to do for the original publisher, since you just need to send a number at the end. On subscribers, this is relatively easy. If you don't care about this, you can just ignore it. If you do care about this, you can choose to not ignore it and reset your encoder, but you probably need logic like that anyways. For relays are the ones who are bearing most of complexity here. But generally, I do not expect this to be. Yes, Martin.
Yeah. So if as a publisher or a relay, I'm retaining the state, maybe because it's just a VOD of static content, or just it's not like a live meeting or something. Would I just always have epoch 0 so that the subscriber is clear that this content is the same?
Yeah, it's either 0 or just the start time at which you started encoding. But as long as it doesn't change, nothing changes fundamentally.
Okay, is that done by? So this is an application thing. It is not. I mean, the transport might have a support for it, but the actual decision of what token to generate is an application level decision.
Yes,
Okay.
The only relevance here is that it has to be the newer clients have to have higher numerical value.
Right. Okay.
Alan?
Can you roll back to the proposal, the wire because I'm not sure if you covered it, and I'm not or just make sure I understand exactly what the spelling is you're proposing here, because I don't think I do. So you're talking. Can you just talk through there's a parameter and where it goes?
Okay, so the start is you put a number in publish or subscribe. Okay.
Okay.
Then that number gets that's in point to point. That's it, and it doesn't matter. In case a relay, what happens is if you put one number, then a publisher with higher number arrives. You kick out the old publisher, and the new publisher is the one whose objects get forwarded. And you also tell all of the subscribers that this happened.
What happens to the group ID? So the group IDs can still be 0 in this case?
So group IDs can change bit. So what this does is the cache key gets replaced with let me find. The cache key is currently track name group ID object ID, but it becomes track name epoch, group ID, object ID, and the epoch, like once a higher epoch arrives, you can evict all the older epochs.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the whole purpose is that you're gonna have like track object group is no longer unique.
Yeah,
You need
that's the implication for the object model.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you just roll forward to the slide that had this actual spelling on it? Like
That's
I'm just trying to,
the spelling. Yeah.
the spelling is just like that number is coming in a parameter, and that's all it says.
Well, no. So the spelling here is like you start like you basically the way it works is you do not receive it in every object. Then if it changes, you receive it in every object until you tell it to not send it again.
You mean it comes in the data plane when you say it's coming in objects?
If it changes, it comes in the data plane.
Okay. All right. I probably need to think more about this. I'll let other people ask their questions.
Home.
Well, I'm thinking about I just want to, this is sort of like clarifying and working through how this would work in my mind. So just work along with me on it and make sure I got this right. So the receiver is going to need to think about this enough because they're going to need to know when they start getting something from a different epoch that this is a totally different, the group numbers aren't comparable. They're not the same thing. So you need to put them somewhere else in the jitter buffer. You need to figure out how to line them up differently. And you need to figure out how to move your play out of the video in the old group number sequence to the play out of the video in the new group number sequence. Does that sound about right? And then I have a relay question. Is that
pragmatically, this sounds right. In practice, I expect your jitter buffer to be empty if this ever happens.
I see. Yeah, right. This is right. This might that might not be very hard to do what I just described. Like you're gonna have to have some understanding of it, but it's not, yeah, it'll probably be easy. Then on the relays, I'm thinking about the case that when you crash, you usually end up reconnecting to a different relay. So do I need to distribute that information about what the epochs for the track name are across my whole network of relays? And I'm trying to think about if two relays were simultaneously getting data on two different epochs for the same track, how that would get merged together to a third relay that they were sending this data down to. I'm just trying to, like, have you thought much about like how that part of it's going to work? I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, in generally, if you see that you store for each track, you see like the largest epoch you set, and you just can reject everything below that.
I see. So right. So each relay that was involved in this subscription one way or another would keep track of largest epoch, reject everything below that. That's pretty easy. I see how you would implement that. And then hopefully they'd only be forwarding, well, right, the final edge relay that was going down to the final subscriber, given there was only one thing there, they would be getting just one stream that would already be pre-sorted out. And would that mean they wouldn't, like, I'm trying to think about the ordering of these. If like, would the new epoch end up killing the last packets that had arrived on, or the last objects that arrived on the old epoch? I guess it would be the solution. Just drop those and ignore them.
Yeah, my general recommendation is like just if you see a new epoch, you can discard the state of the old one. And I generally like expect the epoch changes to be sufficiently A, infrequent, and B, if the epoch change happens, that means it's probably your previous client was gone for more than 100 milliseconds.
Okay, so sort of the general principle is like something's gone really badly at the time your epoch changes, and we don't mind that there's some data losses and confusion around that point in time. And that's sort of like the design. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say the very short high level goal here is I want to be able to ensure that for applications that require original publisher to be a unique entity to be that, and I won't be able to MOQ to ensure that we don't have multiple clients speaking over each other without knowing that happens.
I see. Right. Right. Reveal that. Okay, that really helps me understand. That is my questions. Thanks.
Who's next in the queue?
I think I am. So I wanted to go back to the statement made in the beginning that the obvious or one of the easiest solutions here is to simply increment your group IDs monotonically across a restart, right? And by using milliseconds since epoch or some other scheme that increases. And this is what we deploy for Warp today to address this problem. And the argument against that was that this was wasting bits, right? Because now you have a big number everywhere for group ID. But in our streams, we compress that. We only express group ID once. And then under fetch, we have an optimization to say, hey, this object has the same group ID as the one before it, which is the majority use case. So the size of group ID doesn't matter so much. I acknowledge it does matter in datagrams where we don't have the reliability and therefore we have to independently express it. But isn't that a simpler solution overall, given the compression we have with streams, than the work being proposed here, which is essentially adding in another identifier between namespace and group ID?
I can see the argument as simpler. I believe that this is more robust in the sense that this gives you, and I don't say, my problem with both of those is not just, how to explain it, it's not just that we are wasting bytes or anything of that nature, it's also that we are effectively solving the routing and naming problem on application level. And like we need, like Warp has to think about it, and now anyone who builds on top of MOQT has to think how they're going to deal with this formal limitation.
Right. But the reverse logic applies, that by allowing the application level to solve this problem, there can be many different solutions for it. But if we implement it as proposed here, then there's this one solution to it, which may or may not satisfy all future applications or publishing combinations that need to be resolved.
My observation is fundamentally, if you just send epoch to 0, the protocol behaves exactly the same. So this is giving tools for applications to deal with, but it does not preclude anything from what people are doing right now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm next. I have two clarifying questions. So if I'm a caching relay, and then the original publisher resets, so I have to resubscribe to it, I get a new token. I might as well flush the old token, right? Because that is inaccessible. There's no way to express a subscribe or a fetch to that data, correct? Because it's not in the track name.
Yes.
And the token, okay. That's fine. The second thing is, why don't you need this in fetch OK?
Okay, you probably need, I forgot about fetch OK.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thanks. Well,
yeah, just to echo what I put on the issue, and I think it kind of aligns with what Will was saying. There's already, applications can already do this flexibly, either in the track name namespace or in the group ID, and forcing this new rigid way to do it with time-based epochs and adding a cache key index, rigidly in the hierarchy, I don't think is a net positive. I think it's something that's going to add extra state and extra runtime requirements on all of the relays, and I don't think it's worth that. The solution today is already possible, so I don't see how this is a better solution, and I don't want to pay the tax of extending the cache key. To me, the cache key is a very critical resource, and we should try to avoid expanding it, and this definitely expands it.
Agnes?
A question here. I have the impression that this could be added later if needs be. It's something you could deploy as an extension to the protocol to core protocol as the current is.
That's a good question. I'll need to think about that, whether this can be added backwards compatibly into MOQ.
Alan?
Yeah, I dropped an idea in the Zulip, but which is that another way this can handle this is if you think of your ingest server not as a relay in that but as a republisher. So you can still have this kind of operation where the client has a unique track name, like it includes the token in the track name every time it starts. And the ingest relay has a notion that that epoch is there and it can remove it, and it can publish to the rest of the system a track name without the epoch in it that is like a unified version of the track name that has so like each part of the system has mock tracks that obey the rules we have now. But you have this component that's translating. I have n different input tracks, but there's only one like unified track view that's coming out that the end subscribers subscribe to. So that may be another way to like achieve this that doesn't have the same, for example, that eliminates the need for this wildcard subscribe in order to get the latest thing. Like subscribers just subscribe to like the track name. So anyways, just another idea.
I'm going to close the queue soon. Suhas.
I'm just trying to echo what Will said. This issue has been open for 2 years, and we've been building this the current object model. And one of our main use cases has been trying to go trying to find out the use cases where we really have a bad internet conditions and to see how mock works. And many of the cases we have to restart, and the way we handle with that with the group ID, I do agree. It does waste a space when you start a new start from scratch. But after that, in our implementation, it's always monotonically increasing, so it's not that much of a waste. I do agree there's an application like how Warp kind of clarified how the groups should be used. If some is a better way, I like what Alan suggested to where and ingest server, which is more aware of the things, can do this at the application level. And having the current object model where if you know the track name, group ID, and object ID, without any out-of-band distribution, you can retrieve things that you need from cache, is a powerful thing. If the part of the cache key is a variable thing that keeps changing every time publisher change, and a subscriber have to be prepared to handle that kind of cache retrieval, it's adding more complexity. It might look like you're adding only a few things to the parameters, but in real application, when you have to deal with caching, when you have to deal with fetch and other things, it just adds more complexity than what it sees in the slide deck here. So my preference would be if 2 years we have not seen this causing a big problem, and if really it forms a bottleneck at some point, we can address it. But I don't think so. This we should add more complexity there around this.
Thank you, Suhas. Okay, so we're down to a few minutes in your time slot. Victor, is there a question you would like me to ask the group?
No.
Okay. So are we closing this issue, or is there something else? Well, what is the action item we expect?
I don't
What's
know.
that?
I don't know. You're the chair.
Well, okay. We talked about it for about 25 minutes. What is your conclusion of this from this discussion?
Not sure. I definitely like to answer earlier questions that Magnus asked. This could be an extension, but adding it later would mean that application protocols that could rely on it would not be able to use it. Because basically, like right now, Will said Warp starts with random timestamp. But in practice, I believe it should always start with 0 and there will be.
Yeah, but looking at this, I think my at least takeaway from this is that there's a number that questions if there's a need for this to add it. So I think at the minimal, I think it's good to answer, understand if it can be added if you have further input on that. Because I think if we see if you realize when we get more application deployment experience that this would actually be needed and you can deploy it later, then it's, I would say, no big problem, because if it's high enough desire for having the functionality and the fix, then it will be deployed.
Okay, I will clarify one thing.
Okay.
The situations that would be not acceptable for me is when we create a protocol in which I do not know when the client crashes at all. Now, there are other ways to provide a signal, but like with the systems that have been described so far, I get no indication of that. And that is really dangerous for me, because that might lead me to...
In which role?
As a subscriber.
Yes, but as an end subscriber relay.
And subscriber specifically. Martin?
Can you explain why the end subscriber needs to know when the original publisher crashes?
Because I want to be able to reset all of my state. And if I do not do this, I risk ending up in a situation where some of the publisher state changes, despite publisher believe that this does not happen. And now I am in a situation where I just get data that's inconsistent internally. Helen?
So in that case you're talking about there, I mean, isn't the fact that whoever rejoins and starts publishing again is going to start a new group, and that because that's a join point, that will, I mean, it doesn't tell you they crashed, but it does tell you here is a fresh start of sync, which is completely independent from its previous state, and you should be able to decode it.
Yes, but remember, in some cases, like let's say if I'm sending raw audio, let's throw an example, raw audio. My sampling rate comes from catalog or somewhere else, because raw audio does not have sampling.
Right.
So if I accidentally switch from like 44100 to 4800, now my audio sounds like garbage. And if somehow the publisher does not republish the catalog, or I receive the catalog update after I receive the audio, that's kind of things I'm concerned about.
Right. I mean, like, I'm not discounting those concerns. I get that, but I am saying that I think that like the solution that we've mostly used for those concerns has been to, if it would be used to do different track names for 4800 versus 44.1, to try and reduce the, like, particularly for media that wasn't self-describing, make sure you don't have two different types of media in the same track, unless the media describes itself. I mean, that would mean that you'd have to wait until you could get the catalog and subscribe to that before you could then resubscribe to the correct track. But it does seem like it would solve all the race conditions.
That sounds plausible. That's not what the work spec currently says.
Okay.
Or at least that's not what my interpretation of the what work says.
I need to get more up on work, so I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe Will can clarify.
So Victor maybe wasn't able to answer my question. So Alan, you asked for this topic to come up. What are you able to glean an action item out of this discussion, or is there some question we can ask the group that would clarify an action item?
Okay, so just so people know, this is the last object model issue that's open, that's not editorial, I think. That has like, so I would really like to get it closed, and we can just say like the MOQ, at least version 1 object model is now done, and we can depend on it moving forward. So I think this is one of our highest priority things to just like completely put to bed.
Agreed.
I did not in this meeting hear very many people, like my observation is that MOQT has many degrees of freedom, and I did not hear very many people in this meeting say what it needs is another degree of freedom, at least right now. at the same time, I want to make sure that we don't create something that is going to make like Victor's application break. But I suspect we have enough degrees of freedom somewhere in the system to make it work. But maybe we need to convince ourselves of it before we can like completely close this out. And I don't know the best way to get through that.
So can I propose maybe 2 questions? Number 1 is, do we think this is a problem that needs to be solved with a new tool? And then secondly, ask about, assuming the answer is yes, then ask about this tool in particular. Would that scratch your itch?
I mean, it sounds like Victor has a very specific problem in mind, and I want to make sure that he feels like he has a solution to that problem, because he has deployment experience, a very large scale system, which could be a great MOQ customer someday. So if he goes out of this meeting thinking we just designed something that's never going to work for YouTube, then I think we failed. So, but maybe that could be in the form of like somebody sitting with Victor to go through and like figure out a different way to do it without changing the object model.
Mo.
Clarifying question to Victor. I thought this was an optimization or a different spelling or a more uniform way to do something which could already be done in a different way with mock. Victor, are you saying that you think that there is a use case where putting this epoch in either the group ID or the track name or namespace does not work for some reason in your use case or in anybody's use case? I missed that part. I thought you were just changing the spelling, but it's already possible, but maybe in an ugly way to you. Do you think something is not possible at all?
My problem with the group ID is, as I said, so when the group ID changes, I do not get explicit signal for the crash event happening, whereas with track name and EPO, I do.
When you say the group ID not changing, I mean, if you're subscribed to the group, you're going to see the group ID changing, right? Is you talking about from the subscriber's point of view, not getting explicit notification that the epoch changed?
Yes, that's basically.
But if the subscriber is subscribed to the track, wouldn't they get the new group ID in the data plane? They see the new group ID. How could they not know that it changed?
Well, you always, I mean, you always see group IDs increase in normal case of operation.
Oh, you're saying that you can't distinguish between a regular group ID increment and an epoch increment. Why would the subscriber care about the epoch increment? It wants to know the publisher went away and came back?
No, yeah, I want to know that publisher went away, and specifically when it went away in a manner where it does not have state from previous.
So I'm going to put myself in queue. Alan, I'm going to jump over in queue here. I'm like, just as a proposal of something that might work to solve that problem. What would happen if we put in a header extension that you always put in the first group of your first object that says, you know, new session, this is like session ID, and it provides like a, 64-bit random or a UUID of which session ID this is. And anytime you start a new session, you insert a new one of those. Or, I mean, you can imagine 50 variants of that, something like that. I mean, would that solve this problem to get you the explicit signaling you want?
Would this be in addition to group IDs?
Yeah, group IDs, like everything would just keep working exactly like it is today. But so the group ID would just indicate like you're on a new GOP. But if you wanted to indicate that like at the start of a session, you'd include a header ID that basically was saying this, your state's really changing here dramatically. Like this may be this is a whole new session. And I mean, the thing that I can see on this is like, I think we're going to end up with something like this anyway, because people are going to want to have a session ID they can use for debugging purposes. Now, it doesn't have that doesn't, you still have to, this session ID is ignored by the relays. This is purely just a header extension that's carried end to end that allows the subscriber to know that the publisher crashed or restarted its encoders in some form.
I'll need to think about that.
Okay, sure.
All right, so we have a number of proposals on the table. Victor's original proposal, the successor proposal, which he needs to think about. I would really love someone to propose an action item, like if somebody can write a PR. Victor, do you feel comfortable to evaluate some of the other proposals that have come up and then decide what you like best and then write a PR about it?
Yes, but one thing to clarify, this is for me, it's not just a MOQT issue. This is also like important thing is what WARP ends up actually doing.
Okay. Right. Well, I mean, yeah. So I think, well, that makes this complicated. All right. So I think it has to be designed with that in mind, but ultimately, I'd like to land something in MOQT. Suhas, go ahead.
I think what is very clear. I think from the very beginning we've been very clear. A track identifies a quality, especially when it comes when it comes to the media, and what just reflects that in its spec. I don't think so. There's a confusion on that part of the WARP spec on what track can represent or not. On the other hand, if we need a PR or not, I'm really not sure from the discussions that if this problem needs to be solved first. If so. Like there are two alternate proposals that came with what Alan suggested and what Cullen suggested. Both, I feel like one can be the more core transport change with what Cullen suggested, and one could be a total application. And YouTube application can telling how its clients have to behave. Both we can explore, but I would like the chairs to really see what is the better direction to go from here.
Okay, I feel like there's maybe a bunch of alternatives exploding in this space. I don't think we should design them in real time. We have an issue for this. Let's continue discussing the issue. I would hope that in a matter of like a week or two, we could have a PR implementing something that solves the problem that Victor's articulated, or maybe a collective decision that is not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, of course anyone can write a PR and it's good to look at here, but I mean, I did not hear this consensus that like we need to solve this problem exactly. So I don't want, like if the chairs want to announce there's consensus to go solve the problem, do that, that's fine, or not, but don't.
Well, I mean, I think like Alan made the point, I think we need to respect people's different operational needs, but there's some ways to solve this problem. Some of them are not the MOQT level, and I think that's one of Victor's concerns.
But let's be clear, YouTube today doesn't, I'm pretty like I don't know it, you guys know it, but I don't think it delivers to the client when the person publishing is crashed, right?
No, I'm specifically like, for delivery, it's not a problem since we transcode anyways.
Right.
So the problem is more when the publisher crashes and reconnects. We don't always know that happened.
All right.
Yeah, I'm totally game to sort of try and solve that problem somehow.
Okay, all right, there's a stated problem. It is noted that some people think it is not actually a problem. Let's discuss it in the issue. Let's have people think about alternatives. Maybe something will come. Let's not design it in real time here. Those of you who arrived late, I would encourage you to sign the blue sheets. There's a link in the Google Meet chat. I would like to hand the remainder of the time to Alan to get through at least one other issue. The other thing I will note while he's getting fired up here is that the deadline for comment on our next hybrid interim is tomorrow. So if you have some sort of comment on the week we've chosen, which is I think the last full week of September, and the venue we've chosen, which is Cisco in downtown Toronto, please share that by tomorrow, and then probably on Wednesday. So on Friday, assuming nothing particularly eventful, I will formally announce our hybrid interim details. Alan, are you ready?
I can. I raised my hand just on the previous one. I appreciate that we don't want to design in real time, but I would like to add some timeliness to resolving this issue. So can the chairs commit to, like, if we can't, like, I don't know how exactly what you want to do, like let people go think about what we've talked about here, discussing the issue for a few days, but then either in the list or at the latest at the next interim, like we need, like, yes, we need a PR for this. We're going to look at it, or there's no consensus to move forward here and we're going to close this issue. Because I want to close the object model out soon. I don't want it to linger. So
Alan, if I can add to that one, I think we need chairs help to say if this issue, solving this issue requires changing an object model or not. From what I heard today is that I felt the concerns, or at least the feeling was, there's no need to change the object model to solve this issue, which is a subscriber knowing if a publish crashed or not. And I think if we can get to that, resolving that one, then it's the easier thing for editors to basically go and say, this is not an object model issue. We can close that issue, but we can open an issue to solve the issue, which is, how do we know a publisher crashed? I think this issue is the proposal is trying to do two things. One is trying to do the object model, at the same time trying to solve an issue. I think we need to separate those two things. If not, we'll have another 2 years of the same issue being open. I think that's where Alan is coming from, if I understand properly.
Can you unshare, please, Victor? Alan, to answer your point, yeah, I encourage us to get this done quickly. Let's comment in the issue. Let's think about it, and maybe in 2 weeks we can take this up again.
Yeah, let's come back to it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then in worst case, run a formal consensus call at that point.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I put we only have 8 minutes left. So one of them is publish. I don't know how many people have read the published PR. I know I've got some comments from some folks, which is great. It's like the biggest thing we have to work on. So let me back up. I did land the track alias change was approved by the authors. It was open for weeks. All comments were addressed. It has landed. So the editor's copy reflects the track alias has moved from subscribe to subscribe. Okay. That has happened. Publish is still open. There's a few comments out there. I don't necessarily think that they're any actionable. So can people review this PR who have opinions and let me know what else needs to be done, or us, both the editors, what needs to be done in order for you to feel comfortable with it, or is it good right now? I will say, I think it also includes, the current text of that PR includes changing the match conditions from being exact match on namespace to prefix match on namespace, which I recognize that does not need to be in the same PR, but I'm also like not feeling super excited about moving it to separate PR. But if somebody says like you need to move this to another PR, I will. So anyway, please take a look. I don't know if there's unless anybody has any comments about it now they want to address. Let me just open up. Does anybody want to say anything about the published PR? Okay, it would be great if we could also get folks to review that and stamp it or tell me exactly what needs to change in order for you to earn your stamp. Maybe in the next 2 weeks so we can land it. Otherwise, I don't think there's much outstanding for it. Okay, and then with the last, there's no way we're going to get. Go ahead, Colin, you have something?
All I was going to say is like I view all my comments to that resolve. So like I'm good.
Yeah, Suasa, you had a couple. You also stamped it. So I merged some of your changes. There's a couple where I wasn't sure, and so I added a comment. So if you want to do another round, it's fine.
I'll do that one. I didn't realize that you made more comments after that. By end of today, I'll update you on that one. But
yeah,
overall, the scope looked fine to me, so hence I approved it.
Okay, great. And we need your review on it too. Okay, I will spend like 5 minutes talking about track status, which is not going to be enough for everyone to get their thoughts out, but maybe it will help drive help people understand what's going on. So share, and then I will hit the slideshow button. Okay, so in Stockholm, we talked about what to do about track status and the fact that it is kind of a mess and we need to do something about it. And the vibe in the room was we should make track status exactly mirror what happens in subscribe, just has different code points for the message IDs, but the format of the messages should be the same. So there's PR 1015 that does exactly that with a couple of minor exceptions with how track status okay and track status error works. I just want to go through them and make sure people see. So one of them is that subscribe okay has track alias in it now. And so that is in track status okay, but it sort of means something different in track status okay, right? In subscribe, it's telling you that you need to create state and you're going to receive things in the data plane that have this alias in them. And therefore, if somebody tries to use this in a way that if 2 tracks with different names gave you the same alias, that would absolutely be an error in subscribe okay, because that doesn't work. But for track status, it's sort of less critical because that doesn't create any state. And so I just said that if you get a duplicate alias via track status okay, that's not an error. So that's one difference, but the format's the same. The other one is I have added this parameter called track status responder, and that has 3 values. One is that the person who minted this OK is the original publisher. Another option is it's a relay with an active subscription, and the other is a relay without an active subscription. Everyone who reviewed the PR hated this, but I'm going to explain why I did it, so hopefully people understand. So the old track status, or what is currently in the draft, has this the track status response has this status code called status 4, and it has the following definition: the publisher who's sending you this is a relay that cannot obtain current track status from upstream. Subsequent fields contain the largest group and object ID known. So this is a function that has been in Mach-T since the beginning of track status, as far as I know. I think Victor opened an issue on it during one of the previous consensus calls, and that's sort of what got us looking at track status to begin with. But I think it gets at this core issue, which is like, can I serve a track status OK from a cache? So I have some cache information about this track, and somebody sends me a track status for it. I don't have an active subscription. Can I say, track status OK, here's some information I have about this track. Or if I don't have a current active upstream subscription, I need to send track status OK to the publisher for every time I get a track status. If I am allowed to serve it from a cache, how does the receiver know that it might be stale? And so that's another motivation for having this indication of this parameter. Or like, what if the publisher is completely gone, right? I have some cache stuff, and I send a track status, and I could you could fetch the data that I have in cache, and that may be useful to tell you. That's possible, but subscribe would fail if you sent me a subscribe, because I can't establish an upstream subscription. So, I mean, I don't really have a dog in this fight. If people are like, no, just get rid of it. But I saw what was there before, and I was trying to sort of preserve it in spirit, in some way. And so what do people in less than 3 minutes, tell me what you want to do.
But I just wanted to answer your question of, can you serve track status OK from cache? I think no. You should have to have an active subscription upstream in order to serve track status OK. Otherwise, as you point out here, you are just describing something that you have no idea if it's stale or not. And I fail to see the utility of that. We can invent another instruction, which is what's your cache status, and that can tell you what is the largest object you happen to have cache, but that's addressing a very different problem. So I don't think status OK should come.
Okay, that's good signal. Colin?
+1 will, and the other thing is, I think we should remove track alias. I think it actually causes harm to put track alias in here. By using up all the identifiers as you do the cross the track infos. Yeah.
So the intent with the track alias there is that it does not that putting it in the track aliases as they appear in track status OK do not consume alias space in any way. They are just informational. And that's what I was trying to do with that text. If this text isn't clear, but it shouldn't require you to burn through alias space if someone sends you 100 track statuses.
So if you have one, you use it, and if you don't, so on this, remember track status per connection. So if you don't know, if you haven't sent the track on that connection, you don't report one. I mean, if you
can put 0 in there, right?
So you put 0. I see. So basically, you just always put 0.
You can always put 0 if you want.
Okay, I misunderstood that. That does sort of really solve my problem, but I still think it's like that's useless and sort of.
I kind of agree.
Yeah.
But if I take that one field out, then I have to define. Then it's no longer the same, and I think we're gaining something here by saying like the serialization of this thing is the same as the serialization of this other thing. But if people really think that's a waste, and I could see pulling alias out.
Okay, Mo and Suhas, we have time for one of you. You decide amongst yourselves who's going to talk.
Okay, so I agree with both Will and Cullen. We don't need track alias, and if you think if all we want to make subscribers track status look everything like subscribe but not just the data, we should have a flag on subscribe to say don't subscribe but just give me the status. I mean that's more simpler to do than defining it something that's not needed for track status. So okay, that's my last comment on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Now that everyone understands the issue, please go ahead and reread the PR again and add your feedback there. I will address the feedback in the PR. I mean, I feel like I'm getting a pretty strong signal that like this should be gone. I guess I heard some people say alias no. If anybody else wants to come say alias, yes, please say it there. I will address comments.
Thanks, Alan. If you haven't signed the blue sheet, sign the blue sheets. send your feedback about our hybrid interim location. There's an email about labeling issues that you might find of interest, and the consensus deadlines we've had in the past. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.